Today on Create, I'm building the train station for my monorail network, with a convenient elevator to take me up there in case I break both of my legs. I'm not sure how we're gonna build it mechanism-wise, so this is gonna be fun. But more importantly, this is the last building on this side of the island. As soon as it's finished, this half of the island is literally complete. So we gotta make sure it looks extra pretty. Now looking at this state of affair, you would be forgiven for saying something like, "Wow Zloy, this looks like absolute garbage," and yeah, it does. That's because I'm at the same time desperately wanting to make this look really pretty, while simultaneously mortified that some of the mechanisms that I want to install here won't actually fit whatever beautiful building I decide to put here. And yes, you'd think that this monorail only has the mechanisms as in, you know, the monorail itself, but the truth be told, I do need an elevator up to this place, and I need an extra elevator up down from this place on the opposite side, and guess what? Both of those elevators need to go both ways. So we'll need to do some research before we want to try any of this at all. And the research I want to do goes into two particular components. One of those is the gantry, and the other one, obviously, is the extended piston. CREATE's mechanical pistons are wildly different from regular redstone ones, so we will also need some sequenced gear shifts. But let's face it, these are the elevators that only have 2 floors to attend. So yeah, in theory, a versed redstoner could absolutely make it using regular vanilla slime blocks. I am not a versed redstoner, so you could say I am averse to redstone, however. So this is a regular Minecraft piston. It extends for 1 block, and it can carry 1 block with it.
Boring!
Which is why we are getting a mechanical CREATE piston and a bunch of piston extension poles. These are much nicer, but oh no, what's that? This thing is not moving at all. I wonder why, and that is because it doesn't have any extension poles. Check this out. Adding a couple of them, we can actually get it to move as long as we actually control it. And you don't control it with redstone, because, you know, why would you? And we got a sequenced gear shift. I am pretty sure that you can control this piston somehow else, but the gear shift seems to be the weapon of choice for me. Conchungus, and it refuses to move because we are, you know, telling it to spin the opposite direction. Check this out. Ah, there we go! And these boys can also be made sticky, meaning that I can absolutely attach not only a couple blocks to it, but also I can absolutely attach a contraption-y kind of thing, put together with super glue, for sure. So I think at this point you are already seeing how this essentially is an elevator. Well, this is a bridge currently, but you know, if it did this, but upwards, that would be an elevator. And all we have to do is have a button connected to maybe a redstone link, and we'd be golden. We'll be constantly moving this thing back and forth. I forgot to actually tell it to move it back and forth. Life hack, if you actually tell your contraptions what to do, they do it. I mean, I've heard so, I haven't actually checked. Well then, we'll be using the extended pistons to make an elevator then, huh?
Not this time.
This is really helpful, and this is, like, I love it. But there are other materials that we can potentially use to accomplish the exact same result, and maybe even accomplish it much better. We may want a gantry shaft. So what is a gantry shaft? Good question, Zloy. Thank you, Zloy. Look, truth be told, you probably actually know what a gantry is because you speak English and stuff. I don't actually know what a gantry is, so I'm learning as I go here. We're gonna need the gantry, we're gonna need the gantry shaft, and I want to just straight up try and put it all into the upwards direction. You know, not immediately though, we will still need a sequenced gear shift for this to probably work. I mean, I say need, people are pretty sure are doing this without them, but I like them and they're very self-explanatory, which is how they're really helpful. And then we're adding a gantry carriage, so now we can tell it to, upon receiving a redstone, extend a gantry a certain distance into a certain direction. And look at that, we click the button, and I once again put it into the wrong direction. And look at that, we click the button, and it just moves us, which is perfectly great. This is what we wanted. But how is it better than the piston one? Well, for one, the gantry doesn't push anything that it encounters. The extended pistons somehow actually do keep pushing the blocks that the contraption kinda hits on its way. And for 2, the gantries are actually kind of more programmable than the pistons. You can do a lot by just doing essentially this and rotating your gantries directions. You can have multiple gantries on the same gantry shaft. You can transport power through a gantry using this side road that they have. There is a lot more to them than to pistons, and I really want to play around with these because, yes, I do want an elevator that you click a button and it takes you upwards, and then you click a button and that takes you downwards. That is actually not that complicated. But I also have an idea for a much more aesthetic but also a much more complicated thing. Join me in a creative test world, why don't you? Essentially, here's my thinking. I don't want just an elevator shaft that you can willy-nilly walk into. I want an elevator shaft that is closed whenever there's an elevator in it. That sounds pretty stupid, but let me expunge. This here is a prototype gate that I've been working on. You click the button, the gantry moves out the gate, it stops and becomes proper blocks. You click a button again and it goes closing behind you. So the idea obviously is to do this, walk in, click the button and sail off somewhere upwards. I forgot to program the actual elevator. But here's the thing, all of this can be done with the pistons, obviously. The trick here is though what I want to do with the gates themselves as well. For one, I do want to be able to transfer power from through the elevator, through this gantry, which is why we're doing the elevator out of gantries instead. But for two, there's a reason why we're doing the gates out of gantries as well. Because not only can you place a second gantry onto the same gantry line, but you can rotate the direction that gantry line is going. So check this out. We right click this, and then this, and then this, and so we just converted this entire line into a gantry going the opposite direction from this one. So now we put a gantry carriage here. This is all already glued together, and watch what happens when I click the same sequence gear shift that I don't even need to reprogram. Heck yeah! And then I do the same, and it closes behind you. So the goal here is to have an elevator, which you call the elevator by pressing a button, it goes down to you, you step into the elevator, press this button, and it magically triggers the gates closing behind you as the elevator leaves, and also the elevator leaves. So overall, I'm rocked for this. This seems like a minor logistical nightmare, mind you, and I'll kinda have to explain why. There's a lot of logic that needs to happen to make this whole system talk to each other. But I am pretty sure that the base mechanical parts that are like the gantries and whatnot are already in place here, so I'm gonna go to try and make that in my survivor world, and from then we'll see. Also, I need to somehow block off the gates opening when the elevator is not there, because otherwise you're gonna get killed by the elevator lowering onto you. That just doesn't sound like a good time for anyone. So after much consideration and much finagling, I managed to put together something of a skeleton system of what I want to accomplish here. Once again, I'm afraid to put a building here before I get all of the redstone and all of the, gantries and all of the situations sorted out. But right now, check this out. We walked in onto the elevator platform, and what I want to do then is for the elevator platform to immediately lock the door behind us. I'm actually not using a sequenced gear shift, I'm using a regular redstone gear shift here. So this lever here controls it perfectly. When the redstone line is on, it's closed. When the redstone line is off, it's open, which is pretty great. Now, we walk in, the door closes behind us as soon as I press this birch button, is what I intend. And that's when the elevator starts moving and puts us up onto the platform, which I forgot to light up because of course I did. As soon as we're up here, this lever, or rather this lever all the way up here, opens the door for us, somehow detecting that the elevator has now arrived, and we waltz out. Now, if we want to go back, obviously we come in, we press the button, that somehow should automatically close the lever or something like that, and naturally we go downwards. As soon as the gantry realizes that that's what we want to do. Oh yeah, I forgot that you're still here. Hi! Perish. The trick here, of course, that we need to also have some sort of a button here to call the elevator, which is going to be a little bit an issue. Now, it would have been an even bigger issue if we weren't the only person on the island, or, you know, if this wasn't more or less a system for a very limited amount of players. If this was for real people, I would probably just have this go up and down on a schedule. And you can see why I've been raking my brain this entire time on how am I gonna figure out how to move this. The thing that the entire elevator needs to do here is pretty complicated. It needs to, at the same time, if the elevator is called, deliver the cabin downstairs, open the door for the cabin, close the door upstairs as soon as the cabin departs, so that people who are upstairs are not gonna go into the closed elevator that doesn't have the elevator cabin in the shaft. Then, once we waltz in and click the button, the logic system should recognize, oh yeah, the elevator is going upwards, but not open the upwards gate yet, but already close the downward one. Deliver the elevator upstairs, and then open the gate. And the entire time it also needs to be callable from, you know, whatever. So when I tried to block scheme that, it was just a nightmare. I could not figure out the logic that we would need to follow. But that's when it hit me. From the perspective of the entire contraption, yes, a lot needs to happen. But from the perspective of the elevator itself, the elevator cabin, very few things actually are needed. It just needs to receive a call from a button, go on a different floor, and open the doors for itself. From the perspective of the elevator as a whole, the algorithm is really complicated. From the perspective of the elevator itself, the algorithm is very simple. It's literally get on the floor, open the door. I planned to make that joke since the beginning of this video. So here's my idea here. I don't want the buttons to control that, because then it's going to be player made. But here's what I can do, since all it needs is receive a redstone signal to get closed, and then unreceive it to get open. I can just attach a redstone block directly to the elevator floor, so that when the elevator is down here, the redstone is controlling this, and when it's away from here, the signal changes to its opposite. Hold on, let me assemble a prototype. We got this redstone block activating this tower torch and telling the system to open the doors. But then we click a Z button, and since the redstone block leaves with the gantry shaft, the doors immediately close. This makes so much sense. This is perfect for what we're trying to do, and I love it. Obviously we'll need to mask it a little bit nicer, but that's just the general logic of this entire contraption. We need to make it so much better looking and somehow wheelchair accessible, because remember, that's kind of the entire point of this contraption here. I need to be able to access this without flying at all. This is literally for when I die somewhere out there and lose my jetpack. Today on a livestream, someone told me that they fall asleep to my videos, so specifically for them, this time-lapse is gonna be extra loud. And the train station is done. Oh my god, this is such a patchwork. You can see in the foundation I have not necessarily made any kind of texturization right now on the foundations, on the fundament, on the, what's it called, on the asphalt, on the roads. The shoreline is kind of in shambles right now, and that is because I am hoping to eventually dedicate like either an entire video or an entire stream to evening this out and making this all look much more pretty. For 2, the building itself is severely uneven. This is truly a story of compromises on compromises, and in places the building absolutely does just clip into other buildings and kind of like phase through itself. This is very much a cuckoo clock of a build, and I'm fine with that. This is not necessarily a problem. This is very nicely corresponding to the utter off-centerness that this area is. But the beauty of this build definitely is not just in the way it looks from the outside. The true beauty of this project is naturally in its mechanisms. So we walk in, we click the button, and we depart. We get all the way up to here, we walk out, and we're on the train station. Now, I originally wanted to have a ticket booth here, but I ended up not being able to do that because that's where secretly all the water wheels powering the elevator are. So yeah, this is kind of this is our little secret. But regardless, you can absolutely walk out from the station, take a seat in this place, in the wagon, wait for it to depart in 5 to 8 seconds. The other one is passing by, absolutely, that is brilliant. And we can take the elevator down, except I don't want to actually. This time around, I'm just gonna carefully land down here, get rid of the egg, and look at that. We got this part closed down because the elevator is not here, but we do have this button. And look at this, as soon as I press this button, the elevator is gonna obviously go down, but we don't actually want any of this to happen if the elevator is already here. So when the elevator is here, the doors of the elevator block off the call the elevator button. This is so rudimentary, and yet it works. It works perfectly, because if I were to press that button again right now, the elevator would just depart without anyone in it, and that's just kind of silly. I love it, and the minor bits of civil engineering throughout this build absolutely come in clutch to make this kind of bizarre building into basically my favorite thing here on the island. Yes, even more favorite than the giant airship that we never use for anything. But naturally, this is not all that we need to do here, so we have quite a bit of work in our future. We need to still support that part of the monorail, and we need to maybe drop down a couple support pillars into the ocean for the monorail itself, so it doesn't look like it's hanging as much. But that's definitely fuel for some other episode, because for today, I'm super happy with this, and I feel like this is a good place to end it. So I'll see you all next time. To be continued. Have a good one. Bye bye.